Since the fall of man, a war has raged between good and evil. Over the centuries, this war has distorted the truth. Now the truth is perceived as lies, and lies acknowledged as truth. To this day, the battle continues as we investigate and debate the truth behind the history and mystery of the universe. We are Paratruth Radio.
For centuries, tales of urban legends circulated the globe. Here on Paratruth Radio, we've spoken of werewolves, chupacabras, and the lizard man. But never have we spoken of or encountered anything as interesting or as frightening as the legend of the Goatman.
Now Paratruth presents History of the Goatman, Elusive Cryptid, or Devil's Reject.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And you are listening to Paratruth Radio. It is a brand new episode. So new that we smacked it just a few hours ago.
And, well, it's the first episode of the new year. It is also the first episode on Paratruth Radio Network.
This is true. This is true. Was the smacking thing a little out there?
It's late.
I understand people can misinterpret that in many ways, and I didn't think about it after I said it. But, it's the whole baby thing. Anyway. Oh, goodness.
I don't think anybody would have took it that way.
Yeah, well, now they're going to take it all kinds of ways. It all is just all bad.
Eric from Paratruth smacks babies? What?
What? Hey, no. Only if they're evil and other creepy creatures like that, which we're going to speak about tonight. See that transition? It's beautiful. Yeah, that's how it's done. Anyway. Oh, goodness. Folks, it is a brand new episode, and we decided that this week, for pretty much the intro to the Paratruth Radio Network, we would go ahead and give you a brand new cryptid that Justin and I, we've known about here and there. We've heard about him, but we decided to go all out and do a full episode on the Goatman. And the Goatman is it really is one of the creepiest creatures I think that we've come across. Of course, personally, as everyone knows, nothing beats a werewolf. It's by far the most frightening creature in my book. I don't know why. They're just creepy. But
there's plenty of them out there. Cryptids, not necessarily werewolves. So many to choose from that. I mean, the Goatman is just an interesting one in general because, most people, you never really hear about the Goatman unless you live in the certain areas that it's appeared. So it'll be interesting to sit and debate this one.
This is true. This is very true. And of course, even though there's a couple of small legends that tell us the beginnings of such a creature and how he came about, it comes from a number of different belief systems, if you will.
Right.
So everything we've talked about in regards to cryptid, we've always had to move to it could be spiritual or, it could be real. The Goatman actually hits us on both ends, and allows us to work a middle ground here, which is really cool and interesting to me personally. But from what I've noticed and from the research that Justin and I have done, and we just normally Justin and I, we don't discuss the legends and all that before, in days prior to the show. We wait until maybe anywhere from 1 hour to 30 minutes before the show to actually relate the type of information that we've come across. I think that way we know different information going into it, but we don't know how much information. Right. And it surprises us just as much as it surprises you guys as listeners.
Even though we want to know sound like we know what we're talking about, but at the same time, it's good to, because Eric will say something and I'll be like, I didn't come across that. So,
yeah. Well, and then there's other times where, here and there we will debate something.
Right.
And it's kind of nice when it's one thing when you have the time to think about what you're going to say over several days, but having just a minute or a couple of seconds to think about it kind of makes it a little more on the whim and fun and interesting. Yeah. But enough about us. We're only show hosts. This is about the Goatman. And in our research, we came across a couple of interesting things. One in particular is that he kind of has a basis in 3 different states throughout the country. A 4th one recently came up in the research, but it's not as important. I may end up just throwing that out, actually. And that's the state of Georgia. Sorry, Georgia fans down there, or if that makes sense. Fans of Paratruth Radio.
Justin will be crushed.
I'm sorry, Justin. I'll tell you what, I'm leaving that out for you, buddy. You do an episode all about the Georgia Goatman. There are some interesting things that we have come across. In fact, there's 3 states are Kentucky, Maryland, and Texas. And now I know in Justin's research, he mostly came across all Kentucky stuff, where I came across nothing but Maryland. And I just recently, within literally the past 10 minutes or so, realized, because of Justin telling me, that there's one in Kentucky and Texas, we just both realized.
Right.
We were looking over all of the different legends behind it and trying to figure out where the legend originates. Who started it? Where did it begin? And it kind of, based on the type of information that Justin found, it looked like he was leaning towards Kentucky, but the state of Kentucky was the first to come up with the legend. But based on our research, it looks like Maryland actually came up with it almost 10 years prior to Kentucky. In Maryland, the Goatman appeared, or at least the legend appeared, in the 1950s, where in Kentucky it appeared in the 1960s. Texas, from what I've noticed, seems to have come up around 1969. So it's probably most likely the last state to have acknowledged such a creature as existing. Yeah. And that one's called the Lake Worth monster. All these cryptids, they go by a number of different names. The Goatman is like the primary name. But then you have the Kentucky Goatman, which is the Pope Lick monster.
Which is a disturbing name in itself.
That's true. That is odd. As I just said, you got the Texas Goatman, which is the Lake Worth monster. And then the Maryland Goatman is pretty much just Goatman, which is kind of, I guess, points to the whole, Maryland as being the prime,
the originating point,
originating area, because everyone has to change it up. Even with like the werewolf stories that we come across, yeah. Bray Road Beast is a werewolf, but they call it the Bray Road Beast up in Wisconsin. And there's a couple of other places around the country where they have a different name for it.
Well, look at the legend of the Dogman too. I mean, that could be considered a werewolf as well.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. And the whole idea of a werewolf, we have so many different images of what they look like. Could be big and tall, could be looking like a dog, whatever. It depends on the legend. Yeah. Especially when you get back to Native American folklore.
Right.
It beliefs, But enough of the werewolf. This is about the Goatman. This is only the 3rd time I've stated that, and yet we keep moving to other places.
Hey, if it wasn't rabbit trailing, it wouldn't be Paratruth Radio. Come on.
There you go. And even more recent, it turns out that there is a Goatman supposedly in Wisconsin. So interesting stuff. Yeah. Justin, I know you did most of the research on Kentucky, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your findings in that particular area of the country?
Well, it is based around a area known as Pope Lick monster. It has to do with the Pope Lick trestle. This creature will do different things to bring people up onto this track. It supposedly has hypnotized people, mimics voices, has this weird appearance where it's the head of a goat, some malformed human body, and then the bottom half of a goat or sheep as well. Because that's the other thing too. Sometimes it's known as the sheep man. Sometimes it's known as the goat man. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a mixture of sheep and goat. I don't understand how that works, but it brings people up onto this trestle, and some people, the legends kind of merge in this one area that I was looking at, but there's 3 different urban legends for this. One is it coaxes people up onto the trestle and they get hit by a train. Some of the legends say the Goatman actually holds the victim from underneath the trestle. Some of the legends say that the people jump to their death because of the sight of the Goatman. It's so disgusting and very ugly looking that they jump to their death because they're afraid of it. There's legends that it carries a bloody axe, which I have no idea where that would come from. And also, too, there have been supposed sightings of this Goatman dropping down onto cars as they pass underneath the trestle. Mm-hmm. There's numerous legends behind what it might be. Some people believe that it's a reincarnated farmer who sacrificed goats to Satan for satanic powers. There's legends of it being a circus freak who vowed revenge for being mistreated. Mm-hmm. And there's a legend out there that it's some type of hybrid creature created in a lab somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, man. Like, since it kind of jumps around, it's hard to determine where it actually comes from. As far as the Kentucky one,
right? Right. Well, it's one of those things where it's a lot like telephone. I mean, everyone has probably played telephone as a child. Someone begins with maybe a word or usually a sentence, and then you whisper it to the person next to you, and then that person whispers it to the person next to you. And right. It goes all the way around, and sometimes it comes back as a completely different sentence, and that's kind of the same thing that happens to urban legends as it travels around the country or around the world. One group of people will hear it and then pass it on, and as it makes its way, people start adding in little tidbits for their own particular region to kind of make it more of their own urban legend, And so then we get this huge, like, melting pot, if you will, of the same urban legend, just with a whole bunch of different things added to it. And ultimately, we probably could take all these different ideas about the Goatman from different states and compile them into one to make one Goatman that's just, weird and out there. Yeah. As if he wasn't already.
I was just going to say, as if it's not weird enough.
Or she. It could be a goat woman, just, Anyway, so the one thing I want to touch base on a little bit here, because the last thing you had mentioned was the possibility that it was a hybrid creature that was created in a lab.
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty much the go-to for the Goatman of Maryland. And that story is about a scientist who once worked in the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. The tale holds that he was experimenting on goats, and the experiment went a little haywire. There's a couple of beliefs here and there. Some of the legend says it just went haywire. Another part of the legend says that the scientist basically took some of his assistant's DNA and spliced it with that of a goat to create this half man, half goat creature, which, as far as I understand, isn't really possible in science. I don't know. I could be wrong, but if they do have half people, half animals around, I don't want to get into that. That's going to go down a very dark road, and I might say things I shouldn't say. Anyway, but you never know what they are. They're human or animal. Basically, it's not. That's just. All right, we're on the subject now. Come on. I mean, half human, half animal. If you're creating something like that in a lab, that just goes against anything and everything about humanity and what humanity is supposed to be, Yeah. It's no longer human, it's no longer animal. It doesn't matter if it thinks like a person but looks like an animal, or it's like an animal and thinks, or a person thinks like an animal, whatever. The point is, we get into all these crazy genetics, and there's bad enough stuff about cloning these days. And we hear about cloning and how it's a big deal because people are taking the responsibility of God, if you will, what he does, and trying to create things on their own. Now, the big question, which is something we can get into on another day, in fact, we should talk about cloning at some point. It might be interesting to discuss. Yeah. But the idea of cloning, you have to bring into question, like, if it all comes from a bottle, this person comes from a bottle, which there has supposedly been success in creating the first ever, clone, someone who was created in a bottle. Are they a creation of God or are they a creation of man? And I know there's a lot of arguments as to where one begins and the other ends, obviously, for obvious reasons. But it just gets into this whole thing where, we got to let God be creator, and do things the way he planned on everyone doing things and not start experimenting and creating abominations. Okay? And I know that sounds a little harsh, sounds a little rough, but it's true. You might think, a person coming out of a bottle is still a person. I agree. But still, there's just certain lines that shouldn't be crossed. Plain and simple.
I mean, that's why there was laws made against cloning, even though, I've heard a lot of different conspiracy theories saying that we already have clones. A lot of people that are in Hollywood or mainstream supposedly have clones of themselves. I've heard a lot of different things about cloning, but
since we're the masters of rabbit trailing, we should just call this the Rabbit Trail Radio Network. Let's discuss this. All right, let's just say, and heaven forbid this ever happens to anybody. I hope it doesn't. But say you have a child that you lose. They die for whatever reason, and a scientist comes to you and say, "Hey, we just need a little DNA. We can create an exact replica," because that's what they would be, is a replica, not the real thing. But we can create the same person, and they will consider it the same person. Would you really be getting your little kid back? Would it be the same kid?
So.
No. And I think there's many people out there who believe they would be like, oh, this is the exact same kid that I just had. They had the same look, the same personality, the same little traits and whatever, but it's not. It's a completely different person. Different mind of their own. They'll think different. They'll eventually act different, I think. And then you just have to question, like, what kind of spirit do they have, And this is getting into almost a conspiracy thing, which is odd for me, but, is it a spirit of God in the child or is it a spirit of an antichrist, at that point? Because I don't know. It doesn't make sense. That's something I can't begin to understand or explain, and so I'm not going to. But it's just things you got to think about.
Well, and wrapping it back into the whole Goatman hybrid thing. I'm sure there are experiments right now to splice DNA with human and animal. I have no doubt that for some reason there's a geneticist out there working on that.
Oh, I'm sure. But I wouldn't doubt that at all.
Why we would want to create monsters, I have no idea.
When you think of the possibilities that it has, or I guess if you can just imagine, you get into the sci-fi type of stuff.
Right.
And you think about military advancements. If you're able to create people who have the same type of binocular vision that an owl has, or the ability to see at night like a cat can, or hear like a dog can, or smell or whatever, you start to create these almost superhuman beings, people who are capable of seeing when no one else can see, hearing what no one else can hear. They're always on top of everything. Their senses are heightened. They become a power soldier, a super soldier. And I wouldn't doubt, you're right, I wouldn't doubt that there's somebody messing with it right now. And I've heard stories from friends of mine that are in the military or were in the military of things that they've witnessed or have heard from other military friends of theirs. There is that possibility, and if so, it's sick and it's wrong. But, I don't know. That's for God to judge, honestly. Yeah. And I think the scripture is pretty straightforward on that. But anyway, getting back into this whole Goatman thing. So the other part of the legend, as I was saying before we jumped into this whole rabbit trail, was that the possibility of a scientist using the DNA of his assistant and splicing it with that of a goat, creating the Goatman.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is there are some different photos of the so-called Goatman online. Whether or not they're real, we don't know. No one's ever been able to prove whether they're real or fake. They're usually caught on wild game cameras.
Yeah.
They're just infrared cameras that are left on trees. Supposedly, these creatures show up. These monsters show up out of nowhere, I think the majority is probably faked. There are videos of the creature, much of which you can tell, this was added in later, post their original shoot or someone wearing a costume. But there are some that are very interesting. One in particular is this pretty visual picture of a goat man caught on an infrared hunting camera. And he's just kneeling in front of the camera. He has a face almost like partially of a man, partially of a goat, huge goat horns, hooves, human torso and arms and hands, but there's a dead body lying next to him, which is really odd. Something I didn't notice when I've seen it other times, but I just recently noticed it. And obviously, if that was real, there'd be it made the news, this particular picture, but only the Goatman. They didn't mention the body next to it. Why? So obviously there's a good chance that it's faked. Otherwise, the police would be investigating it thoroughly and it'd be all over the news. But there are stories from Maryland where people have been kidnapped, have just disappeared, and the residents of the particular area, which is Beltsville or surrounding areas, would blame it on the Goatman. Now, whether or not they accuse the Goatman when they make a police report, I don't know. This could just be all for show and game and whatever. We don't know. But the one thing that is interesting when you look from city to city or state to state is the way the Goatman's appearance changes. In particular, that of the Goatman of Maryland tends to have really big horns, and some of the information says that his horns curl because they're so large, as many horns do on rams and which are technically curl anyway. But, however, the information goes on to say that the Goatman of Oregon has smaller horns, almost like a baby goat, but yet it's a full-grown man, So I don't understand why it changes. Again, it's probably just different states try to differentiate their particular legend from other states. But, it's interesting stuff to throw out there.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got a good basis here, so I think we can start getting into a little bit of the stuff that comes from different philosophy and different belief systems here. But first, we're going to take a quick break, folks. You're listening to Paratruth Radio, and you're going to hear Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
Now, Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
According to thefactsite.com, if you consistently pass gas for 6 years and 9 months, enough gas is produced to create the energy of an atomic bomb. Now that's what I call explosive news.
This was Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
All right, folks, welcome back to Paratruth Radio. My name is Justin.
I'm Eric.
And we've been talking about the Goatman. We've been actually just kind of talking about the legends that are here in the United States. But there is a little bit more basis to this particular creature. In a lot of different mythologies and even in Christianity, there is a Goatman god, or that's Greek mythology, of course. And you have Satan and his minions, the demons, who look like a somewhat goat creature. Satan's
Supposedly.
been, has been depicted as, bottom half of a goat, the horns, the whole 9 yards. In Greek mythology, it's the satyrs, who are kind of like mini gods or demigods. Pan is the most known from Greek mythology, and he just has the short horns. As Eric said about the one depiction here in the United States, there's a depiction of just short horns on this Goatman creature. So there is some connection to mythologies and theologies that link to this creature. What are your thoughts on that?
I find it interesting. One character that comes up specifically when you think of the spiritual aspect and think of Christianity, obviously that of which opposes Christianity beside pretty much all faiths, I know that was bold for me to say, is that of Satanism. And Satanism has a particular idol of theirs called Baphomet. Some call it Baphomet, depending on, which you prefer.
Potato or potato, even though I've never heard anybody say potato, but
yeah, it's just, you just did. I mean, anyway, so Baphomet is basically a goat man. He's half human and has the head of a goat, tends to have hooves, typically huge horns that instead of curling or just staying small, they kind of come out. I don't know if you can see me, but they come out and just kind of like this, angled. And of course, it's depicted differently depending on the branch of Satanism, though typically they're all the same. And normally he has a star right in the center of his forehead as well. Now, Satanists, when you talk to them, they don't believe that they're worshiping the devil, or they claim they're not worshiping the devil. Instead, Satanism, despite its name, is something in which people are kind of free, to do as they wish, which isn't much of a faith, I guess. It's weird. Why even bother calling yourself a Satanist? But in all reality, if you're going to call something Satanist, or you're going to call yourself a Satanist or practice Satanism, why do you have the word Satan if you're not worshiping Satan himself?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't rocket science. So I'm feisty today. But yeah, so in regards to the spiritual aspect, Baphomet really does represent this Goatman. And of course, there are stories or legends about the Goatman, one of which is that Satan created him. That he kind of, almost like in a sense, I guess, as God creates man, he formed Adam and Eve, Adam out of the dirt, and he formed Eve out of Adam's rib. And so here, Satan is basically forming the Goatman. He's creating this creature that goes out to kill people. Now, the big thing comes down to whether or not it's a spiritual creature, if it does exist, or if it's, more physical, more humanoid like you and I, solid mass or whatever.
Right.
And I think when getting into that, it goes all kinds of different ways. Obviously, you've heard me say this numerous times, pretty much anytime we talk about a cryptid. If Satan wants to appear as something, or a demon wants to appear as something, it will. And it can. The scripture tells us that even Satan can masquerade as an angel of light. Mind you, he's no longer truly an angel of heaven, and he's no longer truly an angel of light. He's an angel of darkness, the prince of darkness, the prince of this world, and he's a lion seeking to devour, destroy, and kill. Of course, I just jumbled those 3 words up. But you get the point. So there's a good possibility, and also the fact that Satan takes form as a serpent in the book of Genesis at the very beginning of the Bible. He takes form as a serpent. So we see that he's capable of changing form. He's done it a couple of times throughout history. He's more than capable of doing it now. He can appear as a black dog, which many people see and claim to be an evil presence or a presence of death or something like that. He's appeared as a werewolf, according to one person. He's appeared as a number of different things, bat-like creatures and so on and so forth, these horrific beings. And sometimes they manifest right in front of your eyes, and sometimes they manifest in your dreams. Sometimes people can't tell the difference between what is reality and what is just, that of imagination.
Yeah.
But that's how good Satan is. He's able to twist the two to be almost one and the same when someone experiences it. So I think that there is a very good possibility here, considering there is no true evidence of a Goatman ever existing. There's no true evidence that a Goatman has ever killed anybody. I don't think they've ever found a body with goat hair on it, saying, oh, the Goatman must have did this, or just a very angry goat. And so when it all comes down to it, just based on that very simple lack of evidence, you could pretty much assume that either people have seen something like this, because often it just disappears, it vanishes. Again, spiritual nature, it could be there one moment, gone the next. Or it's just all imaginative. It really is just all imaginative. People make it up, And what's interesting is if you believe in something enough, that something comes true.
Yeah.
Especially in the spiritual sense, is what I mean. Obviously, if you believe you're going to become, the next Brad Pitt, don't bet your life on it. Not saying you can't, though I would recommend being yourself and not Brad Pitt, because there's already one. But I'm going to stop talking. Justin, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, just because of the fact that it can be linked to different theology and different mythologies, there is that possibility. The biggest possibility is, to me specifically, I would say more than anything, probably an urban legend, mostly to keep, for the Kentucky one specifically, keep kids off that trestle, try and scare them from going on there. But instead, they end up going to try and meet this Goatman and then end up losing their lives. So I would say with me, I would bet on urban legend, just because there's so many different variations of this. And usually, and you and I have said this numerous times on the show, all these different legends come from some type of fact, but since there are so many different ones and there is the playing telephone factor, I would think urban legend, even though, like I said, it does have a sense of connecting to religion. Mm-hmm. But I honestly don't think that. First and foremost, I don't think it's a hybrid creature. Is it a possibility? Sure. But I don't think it's a hybrid creature. And when it's carrying a bloody axe in one of the legends, again, to me, you guys all know the legend of Hookman and all the different legends of different urban legends. So.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but just real quick, so to distinguish, he means bloody axe as in it's an axe full of blood and not in the way certain English people will speak angrily towards you.
The bloody axe. Sorry.
Different meanings here.
Sorry if I completely butchered that to our English listeners. I do apologize. I don't do the best English accent. I apologize for that. But to me, it sounds like an urban legend. Yes, it could be a possibility that there's some type of spiritual or maybe even demonic connection there, but my bet would be urban legend. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of people will, when they are getting into these urban legends, embellish a little bit the story of what they're trying to say, and that's where the different variations come in, I think.
So then it leaves us with a big question, at least on your part. If it is indeed just an urban legend, then where did it begin? How did it begin? And why did it begin?
As far as, since it goes back to the 1950s in, I believe it was Maryland, right?
Right.
I'm not sure. As far as the Kentucky one, like I said, just a way to scare kids from being on that trestle. Mm-hmm. I didn't see anything other than the one legend of the guy who killed goats for satanic powers, which again, that would be a spiritual type of connection. But since there are so many legends, I don't know where it would have come from, other than maybe if somebody's trying to come up with a creature to scare kids from going into a certain area or to the trestle or whatever, people would look up satires. They would look up demons or the devil and come up with their own little spin on it.
Right. Fair enough. I'll give you that this time. Well, and this Goatman is it really is an intriguing creature, Cryptid, in my book, and I think in both of our books. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about him.
Right.
Again, where exactly this bloody axe comes from, I don't know. It's just kind of, it's really random. It really is. It's just thrown in there. It's kind of just odd.
Right.
When you think about the overall legend. But when you compare it to other stories, not of the Goatman, but just other stories of other cryptids, you think of Bigfoot and you think of the werewolves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some cryptids that are more tame than others. Bigfoot, I have never come across anything saying that a Bigfoot has literally attacked anybody or hurt anybody or any true story. There's stories here and there where people are like, a Bigfoot attacked the campsite or something like that,
or it ran at me or something like that.
But nothing like strictly violent where it grabbed and killed and whatever. You see that with the Goatman here, obviously. You've seen that with werewolves. Occasionally, once or twice with the Chupacabra, I think I've heard one or two small legends. Not huge, very small. And mostly that's all violence toward animals anyway. Chupacabra kills chickens or cattle and stuff like that. But I think the Wendigo is another one. And I think with the Wendigo, the Goatman, and the werewolf, there is the huge similarity that they kill people or there's claims that they've killed people or, taken them. They've just vanished or whatever. Which is very interesting because when you really look at cryptids in general, you start to notice a very small connection between each and every one. As a whole, when you look at them, they're very separate. But when you get down into the details, you see a lot of similarities. And that could be either where they originated, that could be the way in which this cryptid supposedly acts or reacts to people or other creatures. And of course, the whole behavior in regards to like whether or not it's violent or more tame or whatever. But this one, considering some of the other cryptids that we did, has a lot of information overall.
Right.
I know there's been cryptids that we've done in the past where we're just like 30 minutes in. Yeah. That's that. You know what? We're going to rabbit trail. Which I know, we do that on purpose. We talk about the small ones here and there that have no information, just to enlighten, everyone. It's something that we find and we're like, oh, this is kind of cool or interesting, and we share it. Yeah, man. I don't know. There is a folklorist at the University of Maryland. His name, forgive me, is Barry Lee Pearson.
Yeah.
And he said that modern examples of legends such as the Goatman are typically made up by teenagers, which makes a lot of sense because I know when I was a teenager, when you were a teenager, we look at teens these days, they're always coming up with some kind of new lie, something just to scare the other teenagers or the younger kids, Yeah. They all get a kick out of that. So a lot of these, for the Goatman, a lot of these stories that these teenagers came up with, they started stirring a lot of interest towards Fletchertown Road, which is where supposedly this Goatman really first appeared, in Beltsville, Maryland. Again, whether anything really happened or anyone saw anything, we don't know. What I would like to do one day, and I'm just throwing this out there before we go to our next break, is just to prove to everyone listening how quickly a legend spreads. I almost want to sit back, just Justin and I, and come up with a completely brand new urban legend of some kind of creature, and under everybody's nose, without telling you when we do it, just start spreading the word and see where it goes within a month or two, and then do a show on it and just see how quickly these things spread.
And this could be like, ha, gotcha.
Yeah. Exactly, doesn't exist. Well, now it might, because people started believing, and now a demon's attacking them. But anyway, which on Ben and our end, we're really big
bad
jerks.
People. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, it's something I would like to do. It would be interesting, I think.
It would just be interesting because it would be interesting to see how big the legend grows.
Exactly, and I think that goes for that. That would be a good example, not just for urban legends, but just how gossip works. In a general statement, in a general sense, because a lot of people gossip, and you don't realize how much people gossip. Because the one gossiping will gossip to somebody who gossips, and then they'll gossip about the same thing. And then, a lot of people know something that probably isn't even true or may not be true about somebody, and it hurts their reputation.
Yeah.
Which is very sad amongst, children, kids in high school and stuff like that. Which now the show just took a completely different turn. I don't think we've ever really touched base on before, but we can get back to that after
another
our next
show.
break.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps another show, but it'll be after our break for sure. Folks, you are listening to Paratruth Radio. I am, as always, Eric, and we are speaking, of course, with my co-host, Justin. And we're going to take a small break here. Don't go away. Don't go away, because right now, we would like you to check out Justin's Paranormal Headlines.
And now, Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
Man stupid, fix Earth, says Coco the gorilla. A gorilla who can speak sign language has appeared in a new video to raise awareness for climate change. Arguably the best known member of her species in the world, Coco is a female western lowland gorilla who over the last 44 years has shown just how similar humans are to our primate cousins. Coco is able to communicate using sign language and can understand over 2,000 words of spoken English. Trained from a young age by Francine Penny Patterson, Coco's communication skills are only equivalent to that of a human child, but are still nonetheless highly impressive for an ape. Now, in a renewed bid to raise awareness for global warming, the talkative gorilla has appeared in a new video in which she uses her signing abilities to speak out about the state of the planet. Man Coco love, Earth Coco love, but man stupid, she said. Fix Earth, help Earth, protect Earth. The footage was shown at the COP21 climate conference in Paris last month. Because of her unique ability to communicate with humans in sign language, Coco is a natural ambassador for endangered species, the Gorilla Foundation wrote in a statement. NASA ordered to develop a habitation module. Congress has insisted that NASA create a prototype deep space habitation module by no later than 2018. Progress towards a manned mission to Mars may see some acceleration over the next couple of years thanks to the U.S. government's decision to increase funding to NASA by $1.3 billion to help support the development of a habitation module for use in future deep space missions. Back in mid-December, NASA's ISS Director Sam Samemi put forward plans to begin testing such a module by the mid-2020s. But now this will have to be brought forward after Congress demanded that it all had to be done, including the building of a prototype, within the next 2 years. One of the most critical parts of a future mission to Mars, the module will need to be able to keep astronauts alive and comfortable during long-haul space voyages. Initial testing is likely to take place in orbit around the Earth, with astronauts living on the module to determine its viability long before any actual deep space missions take place. We're thrilled that Congress took the lead, said Bigelow Aerospace DC Operations and Business Growth Director Mike Gold. It is the missing piece of the human space exploration puzzle. And these headlines were from unexplainedmysteries.com, and this has been Justin with your Paranormal Headlines.
This was a segment of Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
What's up, folks? That was Justin's Paranormal Headlines. I thought you found it as interesting as I did. We are back. My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And you are listening to Paratruth Radio.
Right here on the Paratruth Radio Network. Whoop, whoop.
We'll never do that again.
I won't.
It's not so bad when it's on the radio. For those of you who aren't watching the video feed, good for you. It probably wasn't so bad. If you're watching the video feed, I'd like to personally apologize for my co-host's behavior. It's very unsettling. I have nightmares at night after every episode, and it always involves him doing something weird.
See, last week you said it was because of Scott.
On occasion, Scott will come on and overpower your weirdness with his own.
Swat, swat, swat.
What's worse is when you both show up in a dream together, and then I wake up in a cold sweat praying to God for help. But anyway, the one thing that Justin and I, we spoke about it over break here, and we'd like to just take a moment and theorize a little bit about why or how, in particular, these urban legends kind of traveled from one state to the next. Again, it began in Maryland, it appears. It seems to have gone to Kentucky, then possibly Texas and or Oregon, and even Georgia. So there's a few states, that are somehow linked by this Goatman. All different, relatively different stories behind the legend here. Some have a little bit of similarities. Some are completely different. But there's a connection nonetheless. Big question, how? Justin, thoughts?
If it is truly a physical creature, and it's some type of animal, either it's an animal hybrid or some type of weird creature that we just have never discovered before, kind of like the Bigfoot, it would probably migrate, or just move from area to area. So that aspect of it could be a possibility. Since I'm kind of leaning towards the urban legend area, it could just be somebody, since it started in Maryland in the 1950s, somebody from Maryland told somebody else, a relative, and it traveled out to Kentucky, and it traveled out to Oregon, traveled down to Texas and Georgia. So kind of like you were saying, the game telephone effect. It was told to somebody like, dude, I saw this thing, and it was a goat and a man all together. And I could see how that would be how it traveled. But, like I said, since it's an urban legend and possibly people creating it to keep people off of like the trestle for Kentucky, that's why they put their own spin on it, because they heard somebody say a story, and then we're like, we want to keep the kids off the trestle, so let's tell them the story about this Goatman that we heard about. Right.
Okay. No, I agree. If it is indeed an urban legend, as you say it is, and yeah, I agree that that's a very good possibility. I'm, of course, going to take a spiritual side to this, and then I have one that I think you and I could both agree on after that. But the spiritual side, when you think of a number of different things that happened, in particular the Salem witch trials, And of
Right.
course, this is coming way off topic here, but I am
Mostly
going
because we
to-
want to talk about the Salem witch trials.
in the future. Yes, that is something that we're going to talk about in the future. But there is actually a link here where I'm going anyway. I am a strong believer that the Salem witch trials wasn't just a mere coincidence or people that were just fearful. I truly believe that Satan had a hand into it. And I think maybe Satan himself even had a hand in it. Maybe. Hoping it would spread a lot further than it did. But I think that there was a point in which Satan touched a couple of people and got them so fearful of witchcraft, even though he himself was the one to create witchcraft, he got them so afraid that they started killing people with very little evidence to support it, other than maybe somebody hanging out, having a black cat. A black cat happens
Right.
across the road in front of somebody. Oh, that person's a witch. And that's how quickly, that people would just give in to fear and that temptation of fear. And next thing you know, people are on trial and they're getting killed, for being a witch. I think there's a similarity here between that, not nearly as expansive as what the Salem witch trials were, but perhaps there is a lesser demon in the works here. And perhaps someone in Maryland this lesser demon went to kind of gave him this idea, or maybe they're driving down the road and implanted this little idea that they turn, boom, they suddenly see something which was never really there to begin with. It's all a trick of the mind. And the next thing you know, it just starts spreading out from there. And of course, it reaches its way through the different states. And the reason that these demons do that, or try to do that, is to get people to believe in something that really isn't real, that really has no, what's the word I'm looking for? Any real
basis,
I guess,
in reality.
I guess any real basis or reality or consistency or fullness, I guess, as God does.
Okay. Yeah.
Demons are constantly trying to persuade us away from God or move us away from God. The last thing that Satan wants is for us to turn to God and believe in him. He does not want that at all. Because the moment someone believes that Jesus Christ is Lord is the moment that they are out of the devil's grasp. In other words, they're not going to go to hell. And that's exactly what Satan wants. Satan is destined for hell. Hell was recreated for Satan and his demons. And now mankind will go there if they don't believe in the Lord. Simple as that. It's straightforward. It's harsh right off the bat. There's a lot more that goes into it that you have to understand. But the point is, if you don't believe in the Lord, you take a ride with the devil at some point down the line. If you do believe in the Lord, you're free. You're not going to hell, period. If you truly believe that Jesus exists and that he is what the Bible says he is, that is God, then you're going to end up in heaven. And the devil can't do anything about it. He can still try to harm you. He can still try to scare you. But as long as you hang on to that truth, that the Lord is God, that the Lord is Lord, that Jesus is God, you're safe and he can't do anything. So what the devil wants to do is try to move you towards anything and everything that you can grasp, mentally or physically, whatever. In this case, it's the Goatman. If he can get you to believe in the Goatman, it'll take the reality of God away, because how can God allow such a creature to exist? And you start to really focus on these creatures and they become a passion of yours and they become this huge research thing and you're all about it and so on and so forth. Your belief system just became Goatanism, if you will, or Goatmanism. It's weird. I know it doesn't exist, but it does now because I said it. But that's the route I'm going. It's a stretch. It's not nearly as big or as powerful as the Salem witch trial thing went, but it is still a very strong possibility. That's the way Satan works. That's the way he's worked for millennia, and that's the way he's going to continue to work. And I say millennia for everybody, but in reality, it's going to be like over however many thousands of years. We don't know. According to creationism, creation has only been around for thousands of years, but Satan could have been around much, much earlier than that. Completely different episode. But the second thing that I would like to just bring up, and I think you'll agree with me, is the simple fact that we have the internet.
Right.
And so when somebody posts something on the internet, and again, we'll just say it's this news article from Maryland that this Goatman exists, people all around the world can view it. They have access to that. And once they do, there's this thing that happens to people who fear such a thing. It becomes scary to them, especially when they see the images. And Justin, I'm just going to throw this out there. I don't know how you're going to answer. Folks, I didn't talk to him about this in private, first of all, so I don't even know how he's going to answer. But when you really begin to fear an image, something that you see maybe on TV or something in a book that you've read that you're just really scared about, and you're alone, and maybe you're driving down a road or you're in the dark, what happens sometimes when you start to think about that image?
You'll start seeing it.
You'll start seeing it. It's weird. You'll start seeing something that isn't really there, but that's just how powerful our brain is. Our mind is powerful enough.
Prime example, actually, and this could be just because I'm a fraidy cat, but when I saw the movie The Ring for the first time ever, I could not be in a room in the dark with a TV without a light on or several lights on or somebody in the room, because I thought that there was going to be an evil girl coming out of my TV to come get me.
See?
It's kind of, I don't know, scaredy cat-ish, but it scared the crap out of me to the point that I truly thought this weird, and not that specific one would, but you think of ghosts or demons or whatever, and you think about that enough, and you're going to create whatever it is that you're thinking of, as you said earlier. So, yes, to me, when you're fearing something, it's going to manifest itself in your mind. If you see a shadow from the corner of your eye, if you're driving down the road and you're seeing these weird things just kind of darting along the side of the road, I think your mind will create the things that you fear, more so than the things that you don't.
Yeah. And here's another example. I got two examples, actually. I was telling Justin, I think it was this past summer, I was driving home from Virginia, and I noticed what I thought, I could have swore I saw Bigfoot on the side of the road in West Virginia area. But once I actually focused and noticed what it was just a bush, it was like a tall bush, almost looked like a small tree. But just because of what we do, here on the radio show, it's something that crosses my mind here and there. It's amazing that when you first glimpse something out the corner of your eye, where your mind will jump to, you suddenly think, oh, that's such and such. But reality, no, it's just a little tiny bush that's just hanging out in the corner.
I think truly you just want to catch a Bigfoot to make sure that it's real, so you saw it.
That's a possibility. But another one, and this is a huge fear of mine, is spiders. I hate spiders. But on occasion, I'll notice like a dust particle or something, or like a fuzz that floats down from the ceiling. It catches me off guard, and I jump because I think it's a spider. But no, it's just this little tiny fuzz, And I remember the first time I saw arachnophobia, I was petrified I'd see a spider. Back then, I didn't know spiders existed. Who would have thought that spiders were real?
I'm not afraid of spiders, and arachnophobia has creeped the heck out of me, too.
Yeah.
So
no. Yeah, so obviously, I hated spiders before seeing arachnophobia. And when I saw that, it was just, I didn't eat popcorn for weeks. I didn't want a spider coming out of my nose after eating popcorn. And it's hard to take a shower, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so you can see what the mind does. Everyone has experienced it. If you haven't experienced it, you're a very sheltered child. Or at least were a very sheltered child, or just a very sheltered person now.
Or you don't fear anything, apparently, because
which is impossible.
Right.
All people fear something. I will track you down.
Unless you have no soul, maybe. I don't know.
It's possible, too. It does seem like many in this world don't. Anyway, so someone sees it online. It starts enticing your mind,
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I saw the Goatman. It's here too in Kentucky. Same thing happens in Georgia, in Oregon, in Texas, and just all linked in that way. Of course, people see it differently. That's how the stories are made up.
Well, kind of like a prime example too, and I know you'll remember this, when we went down to try and find the ghost car in Ohio.
Yep. On the Canal Road.
Yeah, and almost every time a car would be behind us, I'm like, oh, is that it? Is that it? Oh, no, it's a car.
It's a car. It's a real car. It's a visible, solid piece of metal on wheels that has two lights on the front. Yes. It's a car.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that is a good possibility as well. Like, especially nowadays. I mean, back in the day, it would have been more so word of mouth, like we were saying, and somebody describes what it is, and then eventually somebody's just seeing it, out of the corner of their eye or whatever.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's kind of how the urban legends kind of start sometimes too. So, I think that's a good possibility that your mind goes to fear and you just create whatever you're fearing.
Yeah, absolutely. But folks, that wraps up our entire episode on the Goatman.
Yeah.
We've given you literally everything that we found.
Yeah.
So we don't know if you agree or disagree with our views or what we personally believe happened or why this Goatman exists or doesn't exist or whatever. But if you're interested and you'd like to share your personal view of what you think the Goatman is, we would love for you to email us at paratruthradio@gmail.com.
Or, leave comments in the YouTube on the YouTube video or even on Spreaker. If you guys listen on Spreaker, comment and just let us know what you guys think. You can also find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. And also, like I said, we are on Paratruth Radio Network now, and we have created a group for you guys to come interact with all of our hosts to kind of get everybody's opinion. So I encourage you to find Paratruth Radio Network group, or I believe I named it PTRN, if I'm not mistaken. So check it out. I will gladly post it on our Facebook page again, so you guys can find it as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it was a good time, folks. We loved hanging out with you tonight, as always. Justin, is there any more news you'd like to throw in before wrapping up the show?
Just next week, we have Joshua Shapiro to talk about the crystal skulls. This is actually something Eric and I haven't talked about in 4-ish years now.
Since 2012?
Yeah. Well, and it might have, us personally would have been talking about it. I don't think we were doing the shows at that point in 2012.
You mean because we had already walked out on our other shows?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
In 2009 is kind of when we began, it was kind of hot then too.
Yeah. Because we were getting closer to the year 2012, which of course we all know was a big flop.
Still an interesting topic to talk about though, just because Eric's beliefs have changed since then. Mine have changed. And it'll be interesting to talk to somebody who has researched the skulls a little more in depth than some other people that we had talked to in the past. Yeah. So definitely stay tuned for that. I do encourage you guys to check out all the shows that are on Paratruth Radio Network now. And I think that's about it.
Cool. Well, folks, again, it was an honor and it was fun as always hanging out with everybody tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you didn't, as always, don't bother telling us. We don't care. But if you did, please share with us. We'd love to get an email from you.
Oh, and actually, there was one other thing. We are actually going to be a part of Thai Girl for God's premiere show on the Paratruth Radio Network on, I believe it's January 12th is when she's premiering. So definitely check that out as well. As always, we will be posting it pretty much everywhere we can. But definitely check out Thai Girl for God. She's an awesome host, and we are most definitely honored to have her with us.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, folks, my name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
This was Paratruth Radio, and until next week, same time, same place, peace. If you enjoyed this episode of Paratruth Radio, and you would like to listen to it again, or are interested in listening to any of our past episodes, then you can listen to them on HD at our website, paratruthradio.com.
And you can also find us at Stitcher, Blueberry, TuneIn, iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube.
And of course, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for brand new updates of our show every day.